Suddenly, after being plunged into absolute darkness, Chu-Ching returned to consciousness with a deafening scream. And the first thing he sees is the silhouette of a stranger looming over him, with a gleam in her eyes that foreshadows something unusual. "It looks like you're awake, my dear," she whispers, and these words only increase his confusion. Thoughts race through his head. Where am I? What's going on here? He tries to make sense of what's happening. In an instant, Chu-Ching retreated, trying to create at least some distance between himself and this mysterious woman. And she just smiles mysteriously, as if anticipating the continuation of the game, and says, "Is the potion's effect really wearing off already? Well, so much the better." His golden eyes look at her with bewilderment, trying to understand the absurdity of the situation. Realization comes over him in a wave, and he clutches his head in horror, unable to believe that what is happening is real. But at that moment, the world around him begins to shimmer, and the familiar environment slowly dissolves into a shining whirlwind. A deafening blow shakes reality, and Chu-Ching is transported to a completely different dimension. Before him appears his own reflection, but transformed, a powerful warrior who wields ancient power. He feels himself enveloped in a blinding radiance. A shining sword materializes in his hands, and energy overflows him. This is not just a dream, it is a memory, deeply hidden in his soul, an echo of past exploits and experiences. Chu-Ching realizes that he has somehow been thrown out of the flow of time and space, returning to Earth at the age of 17. But who is this woman who meets him at such a piquant moment of his return? "Come on, don't be shy, darling, come here." Her voice is soothing, but there's a hint of danger in it. Chu-Ching, having recovered from the shock, quickly put on his robe, realizing that they were clearly going the wrong way. "Are you leaving?" Her voice sounded defiant, as if she hadn't intended to let him go so easily. She approaches him with a challenging smile, her gaze piercing him. Unable to bear this surreal moment any longer, Chu-Ching quickly retreats, leaving the laughing stranger behind. But the stranger's laughter stops, giving way to a cold, determined look. Chu-Ching, feeling the growing threat, starts to run. However, before he can take a step, her hand, quick as lightning, grabs his forearm. Suddenly, a burst of golden energy burst out from Chu-Ching's body. The force of this impulse throws her back, causing her to recoil in amazement. Chu-Ching himself, stunned, also flies away, enveloped in flickering light. She seems to have never experienced such a reaction before, her eyes wide with surprise. And Chu-Ching, trying to pull himself together, realized the bitter truth. In this weak body, there was almost none of his former strength. The next moment, the stranger is transformed, flashing with a blinding blue light, and now her appearance exudes a different, ancient power. He blocks her attack with difficulty. Protective rings flare up around him, but this cannot continue for long. His gaze catches on the school uniform. It's time to return to his new, strange life. Grabbing his clothes, he rushes to the door, but finds her already there, blocking the way. However, Chu-Ching deftly dodged and slipped past, pulling on his shirt as he went. The girl, thoughtfully lighting a cigarette, smiles. His ability to dodge her impulse arouses undisguised interest in her. Well, this young man turned out to be much more interesting than she could have imagined. Rushing out into the street, Chu-Ching freezes, amazed. The world around him has changed beyond recognition. Skyscrapers, neon signs, the hum of the big city. This is not the world he left behind. 300 years later, he finally returned to Earth, dreaming of seeing his parents and brother again. But his nostalgia is interrupted by a loud cry, and he looks around in bewilderment. He sees how the girl calms the young man, promising to buy him what he so badly desires. And so the happy couple laughs. The young man clings to his companion, thanks her for her kindness, and the air around sparkles with hearts. But Chu-Ching, like a ghost from another world, stands against the backdrop of their happiness, looking at what is happening in complete bewilderment. Suddenly, a rough voice calls out to him, and a strong hand pushes him aside, demanding that he not block the passage. Stunned, Chu-Ching finds himself surrounded by female construction workers, their hammers pounding the asphalt, while the sign, Rebelliere, confirms the merciless reality. His golden eyes widen, trying to comprehend the incredible change that has taken place in this world. Images whirl through his mind, women in police uniforms, taxi drivers, workers, they are everywhere, their power is undeniable. In search of answers, Chu-Ching finds himself at the majestic building of the city library, where the wisdom of the ages is kept. He immerses himself in the enormous tome of the history, as if trying to find a lost thread in the labyrinth of time. Countless volumes lined the shelves, shimmering with the light of ancient secrets, ready to be revealed to the seeker. And so, the pages come to life, revealing heroines of bygone eras, female warriors, wise rulers whose power shaped the world, women who even forced emperors to yield the throne to princesses. The world around Chu King distorts. The bright lights of the metropolis merge into a kaleidoscope, reflecting his inner chaos and the realization of a shocking truth. New facets of society are revealed to him. Here, a woman has the final say in marriage, and weaving men are powerless before her will. This absurdity leaves Chu King with mixed feelings, from shock to bitter laughter at this truly funny new world. Returning home, he sees a familiar, yet now unusual, picture. His father, obediently wearing an apron, is cleaning. The father's face is serious. One can read in it a quiet weariness and habituation to the new way of life. Chu Kuing tries his best to portray carefree joy, his smile shining too brightly, trying to hide his true emotions. But his joyful father and sudden hugs only cause bewilderment in the parent. The father, pushing him aside, asks incredulously why his son returned so early, since Chu Kring promised to go straight home after school. And, as if sensing something, he leans down to sniff his son's clothes, his expression becoming even more suspicious. The next moment, shocked, he cries out sharply, pointing at Chu Kiang in horror. "Spirits!" The father, seething with indignation, shakes Chu Qing by the shoulders, angrily scolding him for his carelessness and beauty, which only attracts trouble. To confirm his fears, he hands his son a newspaper containing a chilling headline about the tragedy of a 15-year-old boy. Chu Qing recoiled, unable to believe what he had heard, his expression a mixture of horror and bewilderment. His parents watched his reaction with bitterness, realizing that their worries were not in vain, but Chu Qing only swallowed, feeling a cold bead of sweat trickle down his temple. Trying to defuse the situation, Chu Qing quickly assures his father that he understands everything and, trying to change the subject, asks about his mother. The mother, as if not hearing him, remains immersed in reading the newspaper, her face expressing deep thoughtfulness and fatigue. The father finally decides to take a break from his disturbing thoughts and invites everyone to dinner, promising to invite his daughter. Meanwhile, Chu Qing's hand was already reaching for his sister's door handle, unaware of what was hidden behind it. With a slight curiosity, he opens the door slightly and freezes when he sees Chu Xiao sitting in front of the screen with headphones on. There's a strange blush on her face, and Chu Xiao's gaze is fixed on the flickering monitor where images flash by that could disconcert anyone. Next to her is a box of wet wipes and scattered used handkerchiefs, hinting at the very intimate nature of her leisure time. Chu Qing, stunned by what he saw, quickly pulled his hand back and slammed the door, his cheeks flushing. His mind refuses to accept what has happened, and he wonders if this is a dream or if the world around him has gone crazy. A shrill scream is heard from behind the door. Chu Xiao, frightened by the sudden intrusion, falls from her chair. Standing up, she indignantly presses the phone to her ear, clearly cursing at the sudden interruption of her solitude. At that moment, the closet door in the room opens, and someone's bare foot appears from the depths. Then she appears, a woman with wavy pink hair, dressed only in a loose shirt, her gaze languidly sliding around the room. Chu Qing looks at the stranger with bewilderment, from whom a certain alluring glow emanates, and she, in response, gives him a slight, mysterious smile. He folded his arms, trying to collect his thoughts, and finally turned to Chu Xiao, demanding an explanation and calling for dinner. She just smiles affectedly, hinting at her live broadcasts and languidly admitting that she enjoyed the sight of a hot man. Chu Xiao just waves it off, playfully calling him a fool who is still too early to understand the secrets of adult life. He, in turn, feels cheated, while Chu Xiao, as if nothing had happened, gracefully stretches, enjoying his small victory. A dry, forced laugh escapes his lips, trying to hide his deep irritation at her impudent behavior. But she is already completely transformed and, framed by red roses, like the queen of the ball, asks for 1,000 yuan for dinner with friends, foreshadowing a late return. The mother, as if sensing something was wrong, turns to her daughter with concern in her voice, inquiring about her evening plans. The daughter, without batting an eye, talks about a joint business project, only causing new lines of worry to appear on her mother's face. Unable to bear it, the mother jumps up, begging Chu Xiao to follow her brother's example, whose hard work would become a reliable support for her in life. But Chu Xiao just smirked, saying that her brother could marry a rich woman, but she needed to take care of herself and her parents should support her. She grabs the 1,000 yuan her mother gave her and, shouting, "I'm leaving," disappears out the door, ignoring her mother's warnings about the value of money. Chu Qing, amazed by his sister's carelessness, wonders how her mother could so easily let her go alone at night. The mother, furiously peeling an apple, explains with annoyance that she cannot keep Chu Xiao locked up like a son, because her daughter is spoiled, but as long as she does not cross the line, everything will be fine. Chu Qing just bit his finger thoughtfully, feeling the weight of injustice and anxiety for their future. Suddenly, both their faces light up with smiles as a familiar knock echoes through the doorway. This is Chu Tianan, another daughter, whose formal business suit and confident gaze speak of her determination and importance. Chu Qing throws himself into her arms, his eyes filled with tears, his body shaken by the invisible suffering he had hidden for so long. Chu Tianan, surprised by such a violent reaction, gently hugs her brother, asking with concern if something happened, if there is not enough pocket money. And then he offers him a wad of banknotes, as if trying to heal all the wounds with material comfort and care. Chu Qing recalls how he used to have to cunningly beg for 10 yuan at an internet cafe, and now his mother willingly offers him money, but it brings him no comfort. He turns away from Chu Tianan, refusing money, because his concerns go much deeper than simple financial needs. The mother, with a gentle smile, consoles her son, saying that although the family is going through difficult times, he should not worry, because his success is the greatest reward for her. Chu Qing's mother, now clearly the female leader of the family, asks where Chu Chu is. She's completely uncontrollable, the father sighs with annoyance, complaining about his daughter's disobedience. The mother, taking the drink, decisively declares, "It's time for her to realize her role as the head of the family. I didn't raise her like that." And then, as if enchanted, the father agrees with every word she says, and hearts float around them. Chu Qing, stunned and confused, cannot accept this distorted reality where his parents' roles have been reversed. The father, hugging tenderly, offers to cook something to eat, showing care and tenderness. This scene literally made Chu Qing feel nauseous, and images similar to this disgusting sight flashed before his eyes. Powerless in the face of what is happening, Chu Qing turns away and, barely containing his disgust, announces that he is going to his room. His steps, quiet and soundless, carry him away from the strange family idyll. He enters his room, looking around with slight confusion. "Is this my room?" flashes through Chu Qing's mind as he sees the unfamiliar yet cozy interior. He peers closely at his reflection, trying to find anything familiar in it. Walking slowly past the mirror, he continues to explore every corner of this personal space. The gaze falls on the desk, strewn with textbooks, notebooks, and cute trinkets. A slight smile touches his lips, heralding a fleeting relief. Then his hand reaches for the handle of the desk drawer. And then the world turns upside down. The mailbox is filled to capacity with love letters. Chu Qing, stunned by this revelation, watches as some of them slip out and fall to the floor. "To hell with all this," he exclaims to himself, deciding that he needs to leave this world as soon as possible. While immersed in meditation, Chu Qing felt a powerful energy that could restore all his lost skills. And, turning to the very essence of the universe, Chu Qing makes his desperate plea, begging the corridors of space and time to return him home. Images of loved ones, warm and vivid, flash before his inner gaze, giving his will unprecedented strength. And now, through worlds and dimensions, through the veil of secrecy, the familiar silhouette of a modern city appears before him, drowning in the lights of the night. With a sharp breath, Chu Qing, illuminated by an inner light, opened his eyes to a new world. The practice of the golden will has not been in vain. Each of his 5 senses is sharpened to the limit, promising unprecedented possibilities. Bright streams of energy, activated by his will, pierced the space, turning every sound into a powerful resonance in his consciousness. Suddenly, every rustle and breath turned into a deafening roar. But through this chaos of sounds, Chu Qing caught only one obsessive echo. Where is his sister Xiaoqing? Why is she still not home? Once again, a searing realization gripped him. He had found himself in a world where the rules of the usual order were inverted, and anxiety seemed merely his own personal old-fashioned whim. But no new order could silence the call of his heart. With feverish determination, he picked up the receiver, and from his chest burst a desperate single cry, "Xiaoqing!" Through the static of the telephone connection, a worried, choked voice broke through, barely holding back tears. "I'm in trouble," she whispered, and every word was filled with the bitterness of hopelessness and despair. Her plea not to call for help seemed insane, but Chu Qing understood. She was hiding something terrible. Chu Qing felt a cold fear pierce through him, and his own voice trembled as he demanded an explanation. But the answer was interrupted by a sharp, painful cry, followed by an ominous, foreboding silence. And before Chu Qing's inner eye, a terrible picture unfolded, where a ruthless force trampled upon those whom he was trying to protect. Without thinking, without hesitation, he made a promise that from now on became his only path. A dangerous fire of determination flared in his golden eyes, foreshadowing a storm. The shadows of the night became his allies as he grabbed his bag, preparing to join the battle for salvation. No one will ever dare to touch his family. He will unleash upon them the wrath that burns in his heart. The numbers on the door confirmed that this was the lair he was about to enter. Chu Qing stepped into the semi-darkness of the corridor. His gaze was firm, and in his hands rested the treasured bag. A voice full of relief called his name from behind the kidnappers. The blue-haired woman who owned the place looked impatiently at the heavy bag lying in front of her. Chu King entered, his voice sounding confident. He had brought what was required and was now waiting for his sister's release. The salon owner rose slowly, her gaze never leaving the man who had entered. With a sly smile, she noted that he turned out to be much more attractive in real life than in the photo. But Chu King was deaf to flattery. His thoughts were occupied with only one thing, salvation, and not empty talk. The smile instantly slid from her face, giving way to a cold, haughty grimace. She shifted her gaze from the bag to Chu King, as if weighing the new possibilities in her mind. And then the contents of the bag were revealed, neat bundles of banknotes, stunning everyone present. Chumg looked at his sister in bewilderment. Did she really not know that there was a whole million hidden in this bag? The sister, in despair, tried to justify herself by blaming a certain Lin Shao, but her words only further inflamed the rage of the main kidnapper. With a resounding click of the clasp, the bag was closed again, as if sealing the owner's decision. "Get away," the woman growled, chasing her friends away until her anger reached boiling point. Chu Qing's sister, feeling free, hurried to take her brother away, thanking her savior. But a sudden question hung in the air like an icy blade. Who said that the brother was allowed to leave? Their steps froze. Turning around, they met a cold, predatory gaze. Damn, a thought flashed through Chu Qing's mind. I can't just leave like that. Tears welled up on his sister's face as she realized their ordeal was far from over. The leader's words hung in the air, a treacherous proposal that threatened to separate them forever. But the sister, overcome with rage, could not even imagine such an outcome. Her gaze burned with determination, ready to brave any danger for her brother. The smile on their captor's face grew wider, her new condition sounding like a death sentence. And she did not fail to add a caustic warning, hinting at the hard fate that awaited anyone who dared to stay. Without hesitation, sacrificing herself, the sister made her choice to try to save Chu Qiang. But there was no fear in her eyes, only a wild determination and anger that Chu King could hardly contain. Chu Qiang, as if waking up, asked her a question full of deep meaning. The next moment, with a sharp movement, he stepped forward, shielding her. His figure suddenly became menacing, and his whole being radiated something more than mere determination. The scene froze. Now Chu Qiang was looking at them, and his gaze pierced right through them. The challenge was thrown down, and a smile twisted across the leader's face, a harbinger of a storm. Unexpectedly for everyone, Chu King rushed into the attack, landing a powerful blow on the impudent leader. The sister screamed in surprise and alarm as she watched the events unfold in an instant. The clash was furious, the air crackling with the force released as their blows converged in the eye of the storm. Although Chu Qing was thrown back by the powerful wave, he only paused for a moment, gathering his strength. A smile appeared on his lips. This world never ceased to amaze, and the women here possessed much more power than he expected. He bowed his head only slightly, his voice full of unshakable confidence, bordering on insolence. Many hands reached out to him, but Chu Qiang had already moved, turning into a blur. The whirlwind of pure energy born from his movement threw the attacker's back, leaving only screams of terror in their wake. Rising above the fallen, Chu King says, "It's all over, we're leaving." But before they can move, something makes him stop. Suddenly, one of the previously defeated girls stands up, her gun pointed straight at Chu Qing, and her voice sounds like a gunshot. "Don't you dare move." The pink girl next to Chu Qiang rushes forward in horror, begging for mercy, claiming his innocence. But Sister Zhou, whose face is distorted with furious rage, does not heed the pleas, promising death. Chu King looks at the raging girl, a mixture of surprise and hidden rage appears on his face. At this tense moment, as if on cue, the heavy doors swing open. A new figure appears on the threshold, a woman in a blood-red kipao, with a cigarette in her hand and a predatory smile on her lips. Her graceful posture exudes power, and her two grim bodyguards only emphasize her importance. Her gaze falls on Chu Qing, and a sudden recognition lights up in it, accompanied by a slight but sincere surprise. For Chu King, the world narrows down to one point. It's her, the woman from his memories who appeared out of nowhere. The questions hang in the air, and she, with a slight laugh, declares that this club is her property. The club's owner, without ceremony, informs Sister Joe that Chu King now belongs to her and demands that she leave immediately. These words fell upon Sister Joe, causing a storm of shock and indignation in her. The owner of the establishment, as if sensing resistance, casts an icy glance. Her voice sounds threatening. Her order, full of merciless cruelty, makes the blood run cold. Get rid of this trash, cut off her arms and legs, throw her out into the street. Sister Joe falls to the floor, paralyzed with horror, realizing the hopelessness of her situation. In desperation, she tries to beg for forgiveness, but the words stick in her throat, because before her stands madness, dressed in a kipao. A cold, unblinking stare and a new order, softened only a fraction, but still terrifying, cut off one of her arms and one leg. Then, her face lights up with a creepy, seductive smile directed at Chu King, as if this mockery of life is her special gift to him. Chu King, puzzled by this devilish gift, dares to ask about her motives. Her answer is simple and disarming. He is the first one who is not afraid to talk to her, different from the faceless crowd. And then, with playful but frightening confidence, she announces her decision. He will become her third chosen one. Disgust contorts Chu King's face. He rejects her, declaring his self-sufficiency and unwillingness to be part of her list. But she only smirks, questioning his ability to deal with his rival, pointing out his apparent fragility. A confident smirk appears on Chu King's lips as he rejects her taunt, unaware of the true power standing before him. The frightened companion tries to reason with him, whispering about the madness of comparing himself to such a powerful figure. The woman, as if playing with her prey, offers to immediately resolve this dispute. Chu King, not backing down, offers a test, arm wrestling, with the condition that defeat will rid him of her attention forever. Her eyes twinkle as she challenges him, reminding him of his masculinity, as if that should stop him. But Chu King only clenches his teeth tighter, his gaze becomes gloomy, and he answers with a counter-question. Is she really afraid? Laughter fills the air. She, Yi Huangshi, knows no fear, and there is nothing she would not dare to do. Taking a step forward, she dictates her terms. If she wins, he becomes her boyfriend forever. Without a hint of hesitation, Chu King accepts the challenge, their gazes meeting, sealing an unspoken agreement. The stage is illuminated by spotlights, and a table in the middle is the arena for their unusual duel. The spectators, mostly women, whisper among themselves, predicting the boys' inevitable defeat because men are made of water and women are made of iron. But Chu King doesn't pay attention to these words. His gaze is focused and full of determination. Their hands clasp, and Yi Huangshi, with a sinister smile, promises Chu King to show him the true gulf between their powers. The tension mounts, glowing auras enveloping them, foreshadowing a battle of not only muscles but also wills. Her face lights up with incredible power, and Chu King, although tense to the limit, recognizes her exceptional strength, anticipating something greater. Chu King, as if gathering his strength, realizes his uniqueness. His aura flares brighter, proving that this is not just a person in front of her. And then, with a deafening crash, the energy explodes, marking the end of their confrontation, in which the forces were distributed extremely unevenly. There is genuine amazement in her eyes, because such a swift and powerful ending came as a complete surprise. The winner stands before her, with a slight hint of triumph, reminding her of the bet that was made, the outcome of which is now clear. Meanwhile, the crowd is noisy, amazed not only by the stunning power of Chu King, but also by the unusual reaction of someone who is usually second to none. And she, as if having accepted defeat, sinks into a chair, surrounded by dark plumes that seem to be echoes of her disturbed balance. One of her confidants, not seeing the depth of her thoughts, hastily offers his services, wanting to tie up the winner. But in response, she receives a slap in the face, a sharp, decisive gesture that unmistakably speaks of her dissatisfaction with hasty conclusions. Her gaze burns with defiance. She is not yet lost, and this confrontation clearly goes beyond a simple test of strength. Turning to Chu King, she acknowledges his abilities, but immediately offers him support, promising protection under her powerful wings. But Chu King, with a proud and unyielding look, refuses her patronage, insisting on his independence and the right to his own path. There are puzzled whispers all around. His words seem strange, almost insane to those around him. In response, she only smiles and, with dignity, delivers a whole speech about the great role of women, their power, and their undeniable influence on the world. Continuing her speech, she emphasizes with a coquettish smile that this is an elementary truth that many seem to have forgotten. But Chu King seems to be losing his patience, his foot tapping impatiently, as if heralding a new round of conflict. So what? He challenges, completely unimpressed by her words, ready to continue this verbal duel. By raising his finger, he declares the human desire for development, that men are capable of competing by their own rules, without patronage. His confident smile speaks of an unwavering belief in the right of every man to stand up and make his own way, even if that way is through battle. She watches him leave with another girl, and her face takes on an expression of intrigue and hidden thoughts. Her faithful companion looks at her questioningly, but she only smiles mysteriously, leaving everyone puzzled about her true plans. A mysterious smile never leaves her lips as she talks about the rebel, Chuching, who she believes is destined not to escape her attention. Her faithful companion seems puzzled by her words, unable to comprehend the depth of her intrigues. With a slight smirk, demonstrating her independence, she rejects any return and insists that she not be called mistress as long as her sister lives. But the scene changes. Chu Ching is walking down the street with another girl, who anxiously asks him to keep their secret from their parents. Chu Ching, however, rejects her request with disgust, knowing that the truth about what happened will inevitably come to light. The girl becomes furious, her voice breaking in an accusation as if Chu Ching is threatening her, but his gaze remains unwavering. In response, she reveals her true identity, the heiress of a powerful family with influence in the cultivation world, and offers Chu Ching an advantageous marriage. This proposal only causes anger in Chu Ching, his eyes flashing with an ominous scarlet light, shrouded in a dark aura which frightens the girl. Night falls on the city, and only a thin crescent moon illuminates the multi-story buildings that keep their secrets. In his room, Chu Ching falls into deep meditation, his body enveloped in a ghostly blue glow. While Chu Xuan is sitting at his laptop, Chu Ching suddenly breaks his meditation, collapsing to the floor in a fit of inexplicable shame. Looking up, he seemed to have a sudden revelation, realizing that this Chu Xuan was far more cunning than his own sister from his homeworld. The next morning, the sun-drenched schoolyard is once again filled with the usual bustle of students. Chu Ching was walking slowly along the alley when suddenly someone's voice called his name from afar. A plump boy, beaming with joy, rushes headlong towards him, as if surrounded by light butterflies of happiness. Chu Ching looked at him with a slight smile, his eyes filled with confusion. Could this really be his best friend, Lin Dong? Lin Dong grabs his arm tightly, demanding an explanation for yesterday and the unanswered calls. But Chu Ching suddenly pulled his hand back, his face distorted into a grimace of fear, causing Lin Dong to freeze in bewilderment. "What's wrong with you? You're acting strange," Lin Dong asks worriedly, trying to understand the reason for such a sudden change. With a forced smile, Chu Ching assures that everything is fine and, after hastily saying goodbye, quickly disappears into the distance. Chu Ching, overcome with confusion, shuts himself off from the world, an unusual feeling raging deep in his soul, denying anything that connects him with Lin Dong. Meanwhile, in the noisy classroom, the students are having a lively time, not caring about their lessons, immersed in their own petty amusements. Chu Ching, exhausted by his inner experiences, despaired of finding peace, leaning on his desk, immersed in a deep sleep. A sudden, light poke on the shoulder pulls him out of the embrace of oblivion. Chu Ching's golden eyes slowly opened, filled with confusion and slight irritation. The class president, Sun Zhaojian, stands next to him, her voice quiet and concerned, asking how he is feeling. Chu Ching brushes off his worries, trying to hide the true state of affairs behind a fake smile and citing hunger. The girl hands him a bun, reminding him of the importance of health before the upcoming college exams, her awkwardness obvious. But then a sharp, irritated voice interrupts her kindness, accusing her of being impudent and speaking with the school haughty. There she was, the haughty queen of the class, arrogant in her superiority, with a glint in her eyes that boded ill. She rudely pushes Sun Zhaojian away, and then turns to Chu Ching, demanding an answer about the love letter she read. Unexpectedly, Chu Ching threw her away with force, an unfamiliar anger flashing in his golden eyes. The girl falls to the floor among the rubble, while Chu Ching towers over her, his silhouette ominous in the eyes of his terrified classmates. A furious cry of contempt comes from the floor, humiliating him as just a man. But Chu Ching, ignoring her words, raised his fist, ready to unleash all his unspeakable rage on her. "Stop!" comes a sudden, commanding voice, causing both of them to freeze in tension. Yimao appears in the passageway, his presence exuding calm and authority, instantly capturing everyone's attention. The red-haired girl, just full of rage, opens her eyes in shock, recognizing the unexpected guest. Yimao looks at her with slight surprise, as if his presence here was just as unexpected for him. With annoyance and threat in her voice, the girl, mentioning Ye Mao's sister, warns Chu Ching about the upcoming meeting and hastily leaves the scene. Left alone, Ye Mao scratched his head in embarrassment and tried to find the words to explain what had happened. Their conversation continued in a more relaxed atmosphere, alone, away from prying eyes. He sincerely regretted yesterday's incident, admitting that after learning of his sister's interference, he tried to find Chu Qing, but to no avail. After their conversation, they found themselves in front of a luxurious house, where a mysterious stranger was already waiting for them. Yimao tried to smooth things over by offering Chu Qing a ride home in his sister's car, and then returning. The white sports car, like an arrow, cut through the air, rushing along the winding road, disappearing behind the centuries-old trees. Inside the car, Chu Qing, wary and thoughtful, watched as a hand handed him a bottle of refreshing drink. With a predatory grin, the girl announced that there were no other drinks in the car, forcing him to accept the offer. Chu Qing took a sip, while Yi Mao suddenly blushed and was tormented by regret, realizing that he himself was to blame for what was happening. He guiltily touched Chu Qing's shoulder, suggesting that he return, but was this a sincere desire or a desperate attempt to change the already predetermined course of events? The next day, Chu Qing, lost in his own thoughts, walked leisurely through the schoolyard, his gaze heavy with recent experiences. His solitary path was interrupted by the sharp screech of tires. A car pulled up next to him, announcing someone's sudden appearance. The same girl looked out of the slightly open window. Her smile was cheeky and demanding, "Get in the car." Chu Qing was indignant inside, wondering why this girl continued to pursue him. Her smile widened, taking on a hint of anticipation, and her eyes flashed with a dangerous light. But Chu Qing responded in kind, his golden eyes narrowing and a confident smile playing on his lips. There was more than just a game in that silent exchange of glances. And now, Chu Qing is already sitting in her car, next to the mysterious, glowing crystal on the dashboard. His voice was firm, without a shadow of a doubt. "You can come and visit me, but threatening me and my family is a mistake." In response, she only smiled mysteriously, her question hanging in the air. "What if it's not a threat?" Chu Qing, puzzled by her words, couldn't understand what she was trying to achieve. Her gaze, full of challenge and mystery, left no room for simple answers. He moved closer, trying to read her thoughts, and felt a growing sense of alarm. She gently explained that her interest was not a threat, but an offer of help, knowing about his family's problems. Chu Qing only chuckled, his question sounding caustic. "So, you pity me?" She dismissed his taunt, claiming that his connection to the criminal underworld only made her more eager to openly woo him. Chu Qing leaned back in his chair, feeling like this conversation was driving him crazy. Finally, he relented, acknowledging her intentions, but sternly warned her not to flirt with him anymore. The woman glanced at the road and said impatiently that this guy requires a special approach, and only the wind rustled in response to her determination. Chu Qing suddenly remembered another question he had wanted to ask for a long time. She turned to him, her gaze piercing through him. "Do you practice ancient martial arts?" Chu Qing quickly waved his hand away, surprised by the question, trying to hide his true strength. But she, smiling, mercilessly exposed his lie, making it clear that she knew about his special power. Her words hung in the air like a promise of unspoken secrets under the crimson sunset sky. Suddenly his eyes widened in horror, catching sight of the impending disaster. A sharp blow, a deafening explosion, a piercing cry of "Watch out!" echoed through the air. Metal crumpled, glass shattered into myriads of pieces, plunging the world into chaos. She lay motionless, her hand reaching limply towards the sky, scarlet blood running down her cheek. Chu Qing, bleeding profusely, leaned over her, his gaze filled with despair and unbearable pain. Suddenly, her eyes widened, filled with horror and realization. A new wave of destruction crashed down on them. An explosion shook the ground, tearing apart metal and glass. Chu Qing gritted his teeth and whispered that the time for explanations would come later, but for now, he needed to survive. He lifted her into his arms, despite his own wounds, and rushed away from the smoking wreckage, while she begged him for help. "What hospital?" His voice was stern, reflecting the cold truth. Their nightmare was far from over. And from the clouds of dust, like shadows from the past, new figures began to emerge, foreshadowing trouble. A whole crowd of angry women, armed with baseball bats, advanced on them, their eyes burning with hatred. There was a silent question in her gaze, complete bewilderment as to why they had once again found themselves in a death trap. A shrill scream echoed through the air as the first of the attackers rushed forward, swinging her bat. But the girl did not flinch, meeting the blow with grace and fury. Her movements were quick and precise. At this moment, one of the attackers, with a mad glint in her eyes, swung at Chu Qing. "It seems I've been underestimated again," flashed through his mind, preceding the crushing response. Instant strike. Chu Qing delivered a powerful blow with incredible speed, knocking his opponent aside. She, having fallen to the ground, did not immediately realize the force that had just overtaken her. The girl, not lagging behind, sent another attacker flying, demonstrating her merciless power. Chuching drew his hidden blade, his gaze sharpening, foreshadowing a new, more fierce battle. They stood in the midst of the defeated enemies. Chuching glowed with an unearthly radiance. His power was undeniable. The last of the attackers froze in horror, watching as their comrades were scattered in all directions by an invisible force. The girl raised her hand. Her eyes lit up with determination, and a mysterious energy swirled around her, and a wave of pure power erupted from her palms, throwing the remaining enemies away, ending the fight with one powerful blow. The fight is over, and the girl, smiling slightly, shakes the invisible dust of victory from her hands. Her gaze, full of gratitude, fell on Chu Qing, and her words of praise sounded like a melody. But then she hands him the money, as if it were a ransom, and Chu Qing looks at her with bewilderment. Thoughts cloud her face before she turns to him, wondering about his true nature. The girl decides to postpone their meeting, worrying about her father, while Chu Qi violently mends his injured hand. And barely having said this, she disappears in a flash of light, leaving Chu Qing alone among the defeated enemies. In a distance, against the backdrop of the setting sun, a girl takes out her phone in panic, sensing trouble. Chu, who seemed to have let go of the situation, suddenly hears her cry, full of despair. He sees her covering her face with her hand, her grief beyond words, and anxiety rises in his soul. He tries to convince himself that it is none of his business, that the problems of this world are too big for a simple high school student. But she grabs his hand, her touch filled with pleading, not letting him go. Her trembling voice betrays all the pain. Her mother is wounded, attacked, and home no longer seems like a safe haven. Chu Qing, having pulled himself together, realizes the depth of what is happening. This is not just an attack, but a harbinger of a storm in the criminal world. Despair overcomes her. If her mother cannot bear it, she will lose everything, and the future seems dark and hopeless. Chu Qing extends his helping hand to her, promising to be there and reminding her of her own strength at this critical moment. The girl looks at him, feeling an inexplicable trust in this man, whose strength and calm are so attractive. His touch brings her comfort, as if promising protection and hope in this chaos. In his arms, she finds instant refuge, feeling protected from all troubles. Under cover of night, they approach a luxurious mansion, their tattered clothes a testament to the ordeal they have endured. The maid runs out to greet him, her joyful cry of, "Mistress, you finally returned," echoing in the silence of the night. She immediately, without wasting a second, demands a report on the state of affairs in the house. But the news is bad. A certain Ye Mei has seized control, banning everyone from entering until she arrives. Her anger flares up, and Chu Qing is perplexed by what kind of person dared to do such a thing. Ye Mei is her third aunt, who has been plotting for a long time, but now she dared to take open action. Determination is evident in every step as they head home, ready to face the conflict head-on. But the guards block the way, announcing that Chu Qing is not allowed into the mansion. Her patience snaps, rage distorts her features as she demands to let her companion through. Suddenly, Chu Qing declares that he is a doctor who has come to treat Madame Ye and mentions his knowledge acquired in the fairy tale world. The guards express disbelief because, in their world, a male doctor is unheard of. Chu Qing, however, diagnoses their long-standing hidden ailments with frightening accuracy. Shocked and pale, the guards are speechless, their faces expressing complete confusion. Mistress Yi's hand points invitingly towards the open doors. The way is open, and they enter the vaults of the family mansion. Inside, they are met by Ye Mei and her companion, showing false relief at their return. But the heroine sees through the pretense, her eyes blazing with rage. Ye Mei takes the opportunity to mock her, accusing her of lack of respect for her elder. She points to Chu Qing, reminding them of the strict rules that prohibit men from entering their clan. Madame Ye, without flinching, repeats that Chu Qing is the doctor she invited and demands that they be let in immediately. Ye Mei, however, continues to insist on testing Chu Qing's abilities if he wants to stay in the house, and so Ye Mei orders his daughter Ye Meyer to check on Chu Qing in preparation for a show of force. Ye Mei's daughter, Meyer, stepped forward, her gaze full of challenge directed at Chu Qing. It was Ye Mei's subtle plan. She knew that Chengxi would not leave Chu Qing in trouble, thereby breaking the family rules. And Meyer, with a predatory smile, offered Chu Qing a bet, demanding that her condition be fulfilled in case of loss. Chu Qing, not at all embarrassed, asked with impudent curiosity what kind of condition she had in mind. Meyer's answer was direct and defiant. She demanded to spend the night with him if she won. Jiangxi flushed with indignation, feeling that Meyer was crossing all boundaries. She instinctively grabbed Chu Qing's hand, trying to protect him from this dangerous game. But Chu Qing, smiling, accepted the challenge, promising Meyer that he was ready to begin. And so, with a breakneck speed, he rushed forward, lightning fast closing the distance. Meyer, without even having time to blink, had already flown to the side, and Chu Qing realized with a grin that her provocative words were just a trick. Chu Qing's merciless blow fell upon her, leaving no chance for resistance. Meyer collapsed to the ground, bleeding profusely, and a cry of despair and pain escaped Ye Mei's lips. Chu Qing, grinning triumphantly, threw a question at the defeated Meyer that was supposed to humiliate her even more. Ye Mei launched into an angry tirade against Chen Si, accusing her of bringing in a savage, but Chen Si firmly replied that Chu Qing was only defending himself from provocation. And Chu Qing, with a cold grin, advised Ye Mei to hurry, since he could not guarantee that her daughter would not suffer serious internal injuries. Ye Mei, trembling all over, hugged her wounded daughter, her face distorted with horror and despair. Against this backdrop, Chu Qiang and Cheng Si stood side by side, calm and unmoved, as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, a second aunt appeared, elegant and stern, her gaze expressing clear disapproval of what was happening. She hugged Chen Si tightly, greeting her with noticeable relief and hidden anxiety. Chen Si immediately asked about her mother, and her aunt said with a heavy sigh that although Ye Mei was fine, her injuries were serious and their help was only temporary. Chu Qing, hearing about the seriousness of the wounds, firmly stated that such an injury could not be postponed and he was ready to help. The aunt, noticing the stranger, looked questioningly at Chen Si, her face expressing a mixture of bewilderment and caution. A Chu Qing, with a slight smile on his face, radiated confidence, urging them to trust him. Chen Si hastened to explain that this was her savior and doctor, and her aunt, although shocked, only nodded approvingly. Running into the room, Chen Si immediately rushed to her mother, clinging to her with anxiety in her voice. The atmosphere in the room was filled with tension. Every rustle seemed deafening. Soon, Chu Qing and Auntie joined them, carefully examining the situation. Ye Mei, barely moving in bed, noticed Chu Qing and asked in a weak voice who the young man was. As Chu Qing introduced himself and explained his mission, images of his own parents flashed through his mind, and he felt a pang of guilt. Ye Mei, with a subtle but determined smile, let go of her sister, wanting to be alone. Auntie, as if sensing something, gestured for Chu Qing to follow her. He obediently followed her, his figure disappearing into the corridor. Meanwhile, Chen Si persuaded her mother to let Chu Qing examine her, insisting that he was her savior. Ye Mei was shocked by such warm praise from her daughter. Her gaze at Chu Qing became even more wary. Chu Qing, without even touching her, accurately described the essence of her injury, a blow from a poisoned palm and instability of internal energy. Ye Mei, amazed by his insight, decided to talk to Chu Qing alone, letting everyone go. Jiangxi and Auntie exchanged surprised glances and reluctantly left the room. Now only Chu Qing and Ye Mei remained in silence, their gazes meeting. Ye Mei's face changed, her eyes narrowed, and she sharply demanded to know who he was and what his true intentions were towards Chen Si. Chu Qing, somewhat taken aback by this direct question, calmly replied that he was not related to the Li family. Chu Qing calmly stated that all questions should be addressed to his daughter, since it was she who brought him here, and did not forget to mention that he saved Chen Si from certain death. There was a moment of silence, and then Ye Mei, after thinking for a moment, admitted that she was willing to trust him. She nodded, inviting him to see what she was hiding. But then, with sudden rage, she warned that any harm to her daughter would result in cruel reprisals. Chu Qing recoiled, taken aback by such an unexpected and aggressive attack. He covered his face, muttering sheepishly about propriety, despite his young age. But through his fingers, his golden eyes began to focus, picking up on something unsettling about the situation. The next second, Ye Mei's back appeared before him, disfigured by ominous black spots, as if from penetrating blows. Chu Qing instantly realized the depth of the problem. This wasn't just poison, but a devastating attack that could rot her organs from the inside out in a matter of days. Ye Mei turned to him, her eyes filled with hope, and asked him directly if he was able to heal her. Chu Qing replied without hesitation that he would try, and his hand touched her shoulder, flashing with a bright light. A powerful stream of energy engulfed Ye Mei, causing her to shudder from the unusual sensation. The glow enveloped her back, but the ominous marks did not disappear immediately. only flickering slightly under the flow of power. Chu-Ching concentrated all his will, pulling out something invisible but tangible from her body. Yimei exhaled heavily, her body tensing as she fought against the pain within her. Chu-Ching himself felt a tremendous amount of tension. His body was enveloped in a fiery halo, draining his strength. He breathed heavily, admitting that he was only able to extract part of the poison for now, fearing irreversible consequences if he tried to do so completely. Ye Mei, although surprised, felt greatly relieved and put aside her questions about the method, feeling much better. Full of gratitude, Ye Mei offered Chu Qing any reward, asking what he desired. Chu-Ching declined the reward with a warm smile, explaining that he was only acting as Chen Qi's friend, as was proper. In a burst of sincere gratitude, Ye Mei hugged her savior tightly. But Chu-Ching, overcome with embarrassment, quickly pulled away, remembering the strict rules of his world. Night had fallen upon the city as Chu-Ching said goodbye and disappeared into a waiting taxi. The lights of the metropolis glided past the window, while completely different thoughts swarmed in his head. His hand, invisible to prying eyes, still emitted an ominous dark flame. The poison that was slowly consuming his powers was a mystery of this world that required a special elixir. Clenching his fist, he felt the alien filth trying to consume him from the inside, but his will did not weaken. The morning greeted him with the bustle of school, where exclamations of admiration for Tang Ziyan did not cease. And the center of attention was her Tang Ziyan, whose pink hair was stuck to her face after the grueling game. With the grace of a predator, she soared into the air, sending the ball straight into the basket. With a soft thud, her feet hit the ground, leaving a trail of delight behind them. But even under the glow of victory, a slight sadness could be seen in her eyes, as if hiding deep emotions. Chu-Ching watched her from afar, realizing that his suspicions had been confirmed. Images from his past life flashed before his mind's eye, in which she was his first and only love. Amidst the cheers of the other boys, his heart seemed to stop from shock and memory. It was too real, too painful, too different from the life he came from. Suddenly a spark flashed in his eyes, and without thinking, he took a step. Have we met before?" he blurted out, catching her attention. With a slight smile, he tried to hide the true meaning of his question by referring to school meetings. But Tang Ziyan, as before, was too perceptive to simply accept his words. Instead of answering, Tang Ziyan merely tossed the ball casually, as if to say, "Forget it." But then, looking at him with a new spark in her eyes, she offered, "Want to play basketball? I'll teach you." Before Chu-Ching could even say a word, the ball was already quickly in his hands. A smile lit up his face again, and he deftly tossed the ball, challengingly replying, "Let's play." Tang Ziyan accepted the challenge, but with one stipulation: if you lose, you will become my boyfriend. Chu-Ching's surprise turned into a sly grin, and he responded with a suggestion, "And if I lose, I'll do whatever you want." Meanwhile, spectators gathered around the court, whispering about Tang Ziyan's incredible abilities, who dominates the coolest students in school. The game began as soon as the ball hit the ground, and Tang Ziyan immediately showed her determination. Her movements were fast and precise, easily passing by Chu-Ching like a ghost. Then, soaring into the air, she made a perfect throw, leaving everyone holding their breath. The ball pierced the hoop without any problem, and Chu-Ching just watched in shock as the surrounding people cheered at her superiority. Tang Ziyan just smiled, full of confidence that she was not going to give in. But Chu-Ching only chuckled, his excitement flaring up, and genuine interest could be seen in his eyes. He immediately took the initiative, pressing close to her, trying to take the ball away. Tang Ziyan flew up again, preparing to throw, but Chu-Ching was already too close. Surprise flashed in her eyes. She felt his presence right behind her. And at that moment, Chu-Ching, soaring above her, miraculously blocked her throw. The ball bounced back with a deafening thud, changing its trajectory. "How did he jump so high?" surprised voices rang out, and Chu-Ching, although he looked shocked, felt a surge of strength. He caught the ball and said with firm confidence, "Now it's my turn." The pink-haired girl, with a hint of defiance on her face, kept her penetrating gaze fixed on him. And Chu-Ching, filled with new determination, rushed forward, clutching the orange ball in his hands. His jump was so swift and high that the girl could only look up in amazement, struck by his sudden strength. He soared above the ring, weightless and determined, as if gravity had lost its hold on him. The ball thudded into the net, and the air around shook with the deafening sound of victory. The ball bounced off the floor and rolled away, leaving the girl standing alone, defeated and discouraged. The bitter truth settled in her soul. She had lost. Chu-Ching came closer and asked her about her wish with a good-natured smile, because now, victory was his. And then he, lightly touching her cheek, suggested something unexpected. "How about I court you?" At that moment, it seemed as if the very air around sparkled with this bold thought, turning the sports ground into a stage for romantic dreams. The girl could hardly contain her laughter, so unexpected and daring was his proposal. But then, regaining her grace and confidence, she replied, "Okay, but to court me, you must be strong." Chu Qing was stunned. His proposal seemed to come back to him as a new, completely unpredictable challenge. He chuckled, realizing that this girl had suddenly become much more proud than he expected, but that only fueled his excitement. A fire flashed in his eyes, and memories came flooding back. The aunt who had helped him make a breakthrough in spiritual strength, giving his body and soul unprecedented power. Night fell, and the moon illuminated the majestic mansion where the one to whom he owed his rebirth awaited him. His aunt's welcoming smile greeted him, and she invited him to ask for anything as a token of gratitude for his help. A whirlwind of the wildest desires swirled in his thoughts as he imagined the most delightful pictures. Auntie teased him, seeing his confused face, but Chu Qing only asked for time to think. After all, such a choice could not be made hastily. And while he was thinking, absorbed in the flow of thoughts, a bright sports car rushed past, almost drowning out his internal dialogue. A leg, clad in expensive, ornate shoes, gracefully emerged from a purple sports car, heralding the arrival of an extraordinary person. And so he came out, all dressed up in outrageous attire, with a smug look, like he was the master of the world, while his driver waited by the open door. The stranger immediately turned to Chu Qing, immediately challenging him and accusing him of assaulting a girl named Tan Ziyan. His speech was full of arrogance. He mocked Chu Qing's appearance and pompously introduced himself as a certain Li Yue. Chu Qing only watched this farce with disdain, inwardly perplexed by the impudence and stupidity of his new enemy. Unable to contain his rage, Li Yue rushed to attack, but his movements were too predictable. With one swift movement, Chu Qing grabbed the attacker's arm, causing him to cry out in unexpected pain. Two bodyguards immediately responded to the master's call, ready to carry out any order of their impudent master. But Chu Qing did not flinch. His strikes were swift and precise, knocking his opponents to the ground one after another. Li Yue fell, struck down by the final blow, his smug mask shattered into pieces. Chu Qing leaned over the fallen enemy, throwing out a caustic parting remark about how he should take more support next time. Even in defeat, Li Yue hissed threats, citing the power of his Li family and claiming that Tan Ziyan had already been predestined for him by his parents, but this only irritated Chu Qing. Thinking about the mysterious Li family that Yue mentioned, Chu Qing was puzzled about how he could find out more about them now. It suddenly dawned on him. Auntie Chen Wawa could help after all. She offered her support. Before Chu Qing could fully comprehend his plan, he saw an unexpected transfer on his phone screen, 100,000 yuan from her. Chu Qing was shocked. Could it be that his auntie took his situation so seriously, allocating an impressive amount, after all, for a poor student? This was a huge amount of money, and such things are not cheap. He immediately dialed her number, realizing that they were about to have a serious conversation. Auntie Chen Huahua replied with a sly smile, playfully hinting that her services were expensive. The next shot took us to a luxurious club, where, apparently, their meeting was supposed to take place. Sipping his cocktail, Chu Qing pondered. The informant he'd just spoken to hadn't asked a single question. Could he trust such a mysterious woman? Before Chu Qing could even begin to think deeply, someone's hand fell on his shoulder. In front of him stood a young girl with pink hair and a mischievous look. Chen Huahua, his contact. Her appearance was sudden, and her playful manner immediately broke the atmosphere of seriousness. He could hardly believe that this sweet, childlike girl was the mysterious informant. After recovering from the shock, Chu Qing listened to her, trying to understand how she knew so much about his affairs. Her carefree demeanor seemed to contrast with the seriousness of their mission. But when her innocent prank resulted in a spilled cocktail, the tension became palpable. Sighing, he tried to bring the conversation back to business by asking his main question. But Huahua seemed interested in completely different details of his life, completely unrelated to the task. Her stream of personal questions made Chu Qing wonder who she was and where she got so much information from. The girl's playful tone only increased his suspicions, as she was clearly trying to get him to open up. He decided to threaten her to finally get the information he needed, but Huahua only pouted her lips in offense. It worked, though. Huahua immediately got down to business, bringing up information about the Tan family on her device's screen. It turned out that the Tan family was facing serious financial difficulties, and the rumors about a marriage of convenience were confirmed. The marriage was supposed to take place between Li Yue and Tan Ziyan, which would help the Tan family strengthen its position. Chuqing was shocked. He had no idea about such a complicated situation because, in her previous life, Tanzien had never told him about her problems. Huahua looked at him expectantly, but Chuqing knew that the information was still insufficient. A new thought struck him. In a world where ancient martial arts were practiced, alchemy could play a key role. It turned out that the Tan family specializes in alchemy, producing elixirs and various potions. This discovery was a real shock for Chuqing, changing his understanding of the world and the balance of power. The girl persistently demanded more treasures from Chuqing, urging him to lay out everything he had. She promised to be generous, but slyly hinted that everything depended on his proposals, and her gaze and manner of addressing him were clearly flirtatious. Chuqing, clearly embarrassed, tried to stop this performance, but the girl only laughed, enjoying his awkwardness. She then moved on to more serious matters, explaining that there were two types of alchemy: the normal one, based on internal strength, which the Tan family practiced, and the second type, using some kind of spiritual energy that she knew very little about, but which immediately attracted Chuqing's attention. The realization that there could be someone like him in this world who possessed spiritual energy shook Chuqing to the depths of his soul. But the girl immediately interrupted his thoughts, demanding 100,000 for answers, clearly using the situation for her own purposes. Chuqing, having recovered from the shock, asked her to tell him about a reliable supplier of medicinal herbs. In response, the girl offered a deal. She would share the information if he had lunch with her. So they found themselves at a street eatery, where the aroma of grilled shashlik and an atmosphere of relaxed fun reigned. The owner of the establishment, who seemed to have known the girl for a long time, greeted them while taking their order. And then Chuqing was shocked again. The girl shamelessly ordered 24 skewers of meat and 4 beers. This appetite and the size of the order made Chuqing question his understanding of women in this world. Then he witnessed an even more astonishing scene. The girls around him were carefree, consuming beer and food in incredible quantities. Chuqing covered his face with his hands, realizing that this world was becoming increasingly different from his own, and the girl next to him looked at him curiously. Suddenly, the girl pressed herself against Chuqing, her touch causing him to feel slightly uneasy. She moved even closer, her hand sliding down his leg, creating an intimate moment. Tears streamed down her face as she confessed that the guy she had loved for years had rejected her, considering her poor. Chuqing consoled her as she sobbed, telling her that she deserved to be loved, and he sympathetically agreed. At that moment, she touched him again, looking up and asking him hopefully if he liked her. Despite all the persuasion, she was too drunk, and Chuqing had to carry her in his arms, grumbling about excessive drinking. Opening the door, he was stunned by the sight of her home. Real chaos reigned here. Things and garbage were scattered everywhere. This young girl seemed to have absolutely no idea how to take care of herself, and her house was a clear example of this. After carefully laying her down on the bed, Chuqing made sure that she was safe, even though she was in a drunken sleep. Just as he was about to leave, he felt a light touch. A sleepy, drunken grip held him back. Her eyes, although clouded, looked so pleading that Chuqing could not refuse and appeared next to her. She whispered a request to stay, and seeing her helplessness, he reluctantly agreed to spend the night there. The corners of her lips twitched into a satisfied smile, as if she had achieved her little cunning goal. And so, lulled by his presence, she finally fell asleep, leaving Chuqing in her arms. His gaze slid over the walls, strewn with photographs of happy faces. As the night progressed, Chuqing, tightly hugging the sleeping woman, realized that he was in a rather awkward position. While she slept peacefully, Chuqing couldn't relax. His attention was riveted by the phone screen hiding disturbing news. The messages on the screen revealed a serious threat to the Tan family, whose alchemy was their greatest strength. The leak of information would jeopardize their reputation and well-being. He delved into secret documents that mentioned the Shizhen auction house, a place where ancient artifacts and powerful elixirs were concentrated. But even in this difficult situation, Chuqing maintained his composure, because he had a trump card: knowledge of the location of priceless artifacts. The next morning, under a clear sky, Chuqing was already on the roof, preparing for a new test. He sat in the lotus position, and a powerful flow of energy enveloped him, symbolizing deep meditation and concentration. His thoughts were occupied by the legendary spiritual stone, an artifact capable of accelerating cultivation and granting access to the highest martial arts. It was this stone, radiating a mystical light, that became his main goal, a source of strength and an opportunity to change his destiny. He knew that possessing it would not only open the way to untold riches, but would also allow him to rise to a new level of power. At sunset, when the sky was ablaze with fiery red colors, a mysterious ritual was being completed in a secluded house. A woman dressed in dark robes stood in front of the window, and a golden glow emanated from her, signifying the return of lost power. At last she felt again that power, that fury of revenge that had been waiting for its moment for so long, breaking the shackles of weakness. With a grateful smile, she turned to Chu King, promising to support the family in any future difficulties. Chu King accepted this serious oath with an unperturbed expression, understanding the weight of the new ties. He left the house, but had not yet taken more than a few steps when he was called out to. A sharp call made Chu King turn around, his calmness giving way to slight surprise. Right under the rays of the setting sun, a young girl rushed towards him, embracing him passionately. Their lips met in a tender yet daring kiss, illuminated by golden light. The world around them froze, giving way to a moment full of unexpected tenderness and sincere gratitude. Pulling away, the girl smiled playfully, admitting that this kiss was her modest gift for healing her mother. However, their solitude was interrupted. The butler reminded them of urgent matters and an upcoming important meeting. With a promise to return and present the main gift, the girl said goodbye and hurried away, leaving Chu King alone with his thoughts. Chu King lightly touched his cheek, thinking about her words and admitting that even such a small gift was quite pleasant. Now, nothing distracted him from the true path. Chu King plunged into meditation, gathering energy around himself. A powerful golden stream erupted from his palm as he declared his intention, filling the air with pure power. A glowing artifact materialized in his hand, pulsing with ancient energy, ready to complete the rebirth. Saying goodbye to his old, weak body, Chu King allowed the power to completely absorb him, exploding with light. His skin was transformed, covered with mystical markings that emitted the golden glow of true power. Finally, resurrected, Chu King stood in all his glory, his spiritual body reborn, ready for any fate. But this solemn moment was suddenly interrupted when the door swung open. The golden glow on Chu King's body instantly faded, catching him off guard with his sword drawn in his hand. A young girl stood before him, and he himself, in his usual, more modest appearance, awkwardly hid something behind his back. She, embarrassed by what she saw, only muttered an apology and hastily retreated, promising to return later. "A huge misunderstanding," Chu King exclaimed, covering his face in embarrassment and shame. Without wasting a minute, he quickly threw on his regular clothes to hide the traces of what had happened. But on his neck, under the collar of his shirt, that same golden amulet was barely glimmering. Chu King's gaze became determined. It was time to try his luck at the auction house. The bustle of the city gave way to majestic buildings, among which stood the famous Shiren auction house. The carved doors creaked open, and Chu King stepped into a world where destinies were decided by the price of rare artifacts. Behind the counter, engrossed in his phone, sat an elegant young man, grumbling irritably about the late customers. He didn't even look at Chu King, waving off the standard phrase about closing and suggesting to come back tomorrow. But Chu King did not give up, holding out his palm, on which a mysterious stone was pulsating with a golden light. The light, like a magnet, pulled the merchant's gaze away from the screen, forcing him to raise his head. A flash of surprise mixed with incomprehension flashed in his eyes. He threw the phone down with a bang and jumped up abruptly, forgetting about his manners and fatigue. "Can I see?" he said, holding out his hand, his voice already tinged with genuine anticipation. The golden crystal passed into his palm, emitting incredible energy that could shake the foundations of the cultivation world. "This is a rare treasure, perfect for beginner cultivators," he exclaimed, his eyes glowing gold. And the next moment, his gaze revealed a calculating assessment and a deep understanding of the true power of this artifact. The stranger introduced himself as Zhaiu, the heir to the influential Shiren auction house, extending his hand to introduce himself. The handshake sealed an unspoken agreement, filled with airborne energy and hidden intentions. A spirit stone was glimmering in Zhaiu's hands, and he explained with a smile that he had 5 more of them, knowing their true value. Making a generous offer, he was ready to give 1,000,000 for all the stones, his eyes shining with anticipation of the deal. Chu King walked down the street, absorbed in thoughts of his unprecedented good fortune and the opportunities that this wealth would open up. Taking a break from his financial plans, he saw a message from Hua inviting him to a barbecue, a reminder of worldly pleasures. A slight smile touched his lips as he typed his reply, looking forward to a pleasant evening with friends. But suddenly his golden eyes widened, catching the subtlest change in the air that foreshadowed trouble. Like a shadow, a figure burst out of the darkness, rapidly closing the distance and preparing to attack. The blade of a knife flashed, aimed straight at the back, and the whistle of cutting air was heard. Chu King, having managed to turn around, activated the sword formation with a shout, and the ancient power awakened within him. A golden glow enveloped him, pushing the enemy back, and the magic circles under his feet pulsed with unimaginable power. The attacker recoiled, stunned by the incredible power, his question a whisper of disbelief. Streams of energy whistled through the air, cutting through space and confirming undeniable superiority. The attacker's only visible eye was frozen in horror and the realization of his own powerlessness. A powerful blow from the golden sword pierced his opponent, blood splattered, coloring the moment. Thrown back, the enemy collapsed, trying to shield himself from the merciless attack, but it was too late. Chu King's steps confidently approached the defeated enemy, echoing in the silence. Chu Kiwang grabbed his opponent by the collar and pointed a glittering sword at him, and genuine horror could be seen in the attacker's eyes. With icy calm, Chu Qing asked only one question, the sharpness of which was comparable to the blade of his sword: "Who sent you?" But the answers never came, because somewhere far away, in the shadows, the mysterious villain only grinned, anticipating the coming chaos. With undisguised confidence, he was already paving the way to a new goal, whispering threats into the void against the Li family. Suddenly, a sharp wave of pain and heat pierced Chu Qing. His body was overcome by an unknown illness, depriving him of strength. My head started spinning, the world swam before my eyes, and the blood in my veins seemed to boil, threatening to burst out. He pressed himself against the cold wall, trying to hold on to his slipping consciousness, but every breath was difficult. His thoughts were confused, and in the depths of his mind, through the veil of pain, Chu Qing desperately tried to understand what was happening to him and why he was here. And then, like a mirage, she appeared before him, gentle and joyful, with eyes full of expectation. Chu Qing, exhausted and burning, looked at the girl, his face burning not only from the heat, but also from growing embarrassment. Before he could even process anything, he felt her gently hug him, pressing her whole body against him. And at that very moment, feeling something unexpected, the girl recoiled, an astonished question frozen in her eyes. But then, as if drawn by an unknown force, their lips touched in a tender, timid kiss. A soft, luminous glow enveloped them, shimmering with unspoken feelings, a silent testimony to the magic of the moment. He deepened the kiss, like a silent plea, a desperate hope, trying to convey every unspoken word, every secret desire. But the sweetness was fleeting. A shadow of guilt darkened Chu Qing's thoughts, causing him to doubt his actions and himself. And yet, she only pressed herself closer to him, a tender, childish embrace filled with serene happiness, as if trying to dispel his worries. Her voice, quiet and insistent, sounded like permission and a plea, whispering not to stop, not to dare end this fragile moment that was so necessary for both of them. But even as he froze, confused and broken, her shining hair, like a waterfall, continued to flow, enveloping his world in magical, weightless silk. That night, his confusion gave way to a tender calm, as two worlds finally found refuge in each other's arms. And while she slept peacefully under the cover of his arm, Chu Qing allowed his thoughts to wander freely, touching her deepest dreams. Her dreams became his new beacons. The morning opened its arms over the city, promising a new day full of new encounters and discoveries. But for Chu Qing, this day began with a deep sleep, oblivion after a night that changed his world. His peace was suddenly disturbed when Tanzian appeared at the classroom door, and behind her, people were already whispering about her courage. The dream evaporated like smoke, and Chu Qing's golden eyes widened, meeting the unexpected challenge. She leaned toward him, her voice seeming to carry both the command and an invitation to breakfast. Are girls in this world really that straightforward? Chu Qing was perplexed, trying to comprehend her audacity. Something flashed in her eyes, a spark of guess, a momentary insight that could destroy his peace. And the words she spoke were as unexpected as they were sharp. "Why do you smell like another woman?" The awkwardness hung in the air, thick and palpable, causing Chu Qing to shrink under her gaze. But Tanzian, as if nothing had happened, abruptly changed the subject, again suggesting that they go together. Chu Qing, taken aback by this sudden change, stood up awkwardly, agreeing in order to somehow get out of this awkward situation. He sighed deeply, relieved to have avoided more serious questions, at least for now. Surprised voices whispered from the sidelines, not believing their eyes. It was a shock for the entire school. Walking next to her along the corridor, Chu Qing still risked asking what kind of sudden desire had brought them together today. She simply waved her hand, avoiding his gaze, her answer evasive and lacking any specifics. There was more to her silence than a simple desire to eat, a determination she was in no hurry to reveal. Chu Qing felt that she was playing with him, not giving him a single chance to understand her true motives. And then, when he least expected it, her hand fell on his, intertwining their fingers in a silent promise. Her eyes widened and her cheeks flushed, betraying her own confusion and awkwardness at such an action. Chu Qing just looked at her, his golden eyes full of amazement and barely concealed anxiety in front of this new, unpredictable connection. The boy lightly squeezed her hand, and she blushed, as if from an electric shock, trying to hide her embarrassment. And then, as if playing, he lightly touched her nose, causing a new wave of blush. She shuddered, flushed with embarrassment, and pulled back, covering her face. Her angry cry about inviolability was only met with his carefree, almost impudent, "What's wrong?" Chu Qing just chuckled, enjoying the moment as if he was the sole ruler of their small world. And although she tried to be angry, deep down something subtly changed, as if his presence had awakened a long-forgotten warmth. The memory of Chu Qing, his strength, his ability to protect, filled her heart with a strange, unfamiliar confidence. Thoughts that were too bold, too dangerous, swirled through her head, and she was burning again, but not from anger, but from confusion. A moment later, they were already sitting in a cozy cafe, and Chu Qing, without a second's hesitation, ordered their noodles. But it wasn't just his skill that caught her attention, but his thorough knowledge of her preferences, which caused a wave of suspicion and another blush. He noticed her confusion, and his worried look only increased her confusion. But the peace of this fleeting moment was deceptive, because behind their backs the shadow of a threat had already materialized. Chu Qing's golden eyes, which had been so carefree until now, suddenly darkened as they sensed something ominous in the air. The two figures gliding through the hall carried something cold and deadly, hidden behind their everyday clothes. Without saying a word, Chu Qing stood up with lightning speed, instinctively reacting to the approaching danger. A short, silent nod, and their faces contorted with determination, foreshadowing the imminent attack. The next moment, steel flashed and the hidden weapon was in the hands of the attackers. One of them, with a frozen expression of cruelty, raised her blade, aiming straight at the innocent girl. But before the blow reached its target, something darted into the air, interrupting the knife's trajectory. The hot noodles rained down on the attacker, blinding her and pushing the deadly blade away. Blinded by the hot noodles, the attacker screamed in pain and surprise. The knife, still clutched in his hand, hung a few centimeters from the frightened girl. The next moment, Chu intercepted the attacker's hand, sacrificing himself to protect his companion. Seeing blood on his shirt, the girl screamed his name in horror. But there was no fear on Chu King's face, only cold determination and anger piercing his golden eyes. The power awakened within him, enveloping his body in a bright, protective glow. Suddenly, the second opponent, like a shadow, delivered a powerful kick, throwing the attacker with the knife aside. Concerned, his companion turned to Chu Qing, but he only stood silently, enveloped in an aura of power. "I can't leave my girlfriend," flashed through his mind, and rage flared in his eyes again. He rushed forward, surrounded by a powerful golden glow, his voice sounding firm. "Not in this life." But the new opponent turned out to be incredibly agile, parrying his attack with a precise kick. Chu Qing did not give up. His gaze remained unwavering, and strength continued to surge through his veins. Putting all his fury into his fist, Chu Qing unleashed a crushing blow on her, sending the enemy flying across the room. Watching the first attacker fall, Chu Qing prepared for his next move. But the purple-clad attacker proved tenacious, rushing at Chu Qing again with a sudden palm strike. The blow landed on his shoulder, but Chu Qing didn't even flinch, only silently enduring the pain. After a short pause, he slowly turned his head, a sinister grin appearing on his face. With lightning speed, Chu Qing counterattacked, sending his opponent flying into the wall with force. The battle ended, and Chu Qing and the girl stood calmly, looking at their defeated enemies. The two attackers lay on the floor, bleeding. Their attempt failed. Her gaze pierced Chu Qing, trying to unravel his secret, and the girl finally asked the question that had been tormenting her. "Are you really from a family of practitioners?" With a slight smile, Chu Qing replied that he was just an ordinary person, although there was something unspoken in his words, something that was difficult for him to explain. But there was no time for explanations. Chu Ing firmly grabbed the girl by the hand, saying that it was time for them to leave before it became too dangerous, and asked her to take care of the fallen through her family. They hurriedly left the battlefield, leaving their fallen enemies behind, and moved through the sunlit streets of the city, while Chu Qing supported his companion by the shoulder. Concern was reflected in her eyes as she carefully asked Chu Qing if he was okay, suggesting that they go to the hospital immediately. But Chu King only smiled good-naturedly, assuring him that it was just a small scratch that would soon heal on its own, without requiring any special attention. However, deep down, Chu King was more serious. He thought about how these seemingly not very strong opponents were able to inflict a wound on him as if they wielded a magical weapon, and came to the conclusion that he should be much more careful in the future. The girl thoughtfully broke the silence, noting that, apparently, Chu King already had very deep knowledge about her family, which caused her some surprise. Chu King hastened to explain that this was not the case. He had become interested in her family after meeting a certain person, and the girl immediately asked curiously, "With whom?" His gaze became piercing for a moment, and a golden glow faintly flashed around Chu King as he uttered a name full of hidden menace. "Hearing Liyue's name," the girl gasped, her eyes widening in horror. "If he attacked you, then you are in mortal danger." Chu King just chuckled smugly, waving his hand. "Don't worry, someone like Liui is no match for me." His voice was filled with unwavering confidence. At these words, the girl blushed like a poppy flower and covered her embarrassed mouth with her hand, unable to utter a word. Their steps beat a rhythmic rhythm on the cobblestones, each step bringing them closer to an unknown future. The girl looked up at him again, continuing the conversation they had started, and with a hint of an unspoken question, asked, "So why did you save me?" Chu King lightly scratched the back of his head, his gaze becoming thoughtful. "Well, I don't even know how to explain this to you." Then he smiled warmly, looking into her eyes. "I feel like we've known each other forever, and that's why I'm ready to sacrifice everything for you, even my life." At these words, the girl blushed like a poppy flower and covered her embarrassed mouth with her hand, unable to utter a word. Chu King, who had become serious again, said that she could consider it a benefit, but as long as there was trust, he would help her in any way he could, because he knew about the difficult times that her family was going through. The girl closed her eyes, lost in her memories, and began to talk about her family, famous for producing medicines, about the dozens of companies under their control, and about how a month ago a stolen recipe provoked pressure from other influential clans. She told of the treachery of the Li family, who wanted to intermarry with her in order to completely absorb their clan. Chu King, filled with righteous anger, was playing out in his head the Li clan's daring plans to destroy not only her family, but also another influential dynasty. Then, gently but firmly, he placed his hands on her shoulders, asking if she would believe him if he promised to help her. The girl looked up at him, her gaze full of doubt, but also timid hope, as if she couldn't believe his promise. Chu King smiled, and in that smile one could read confidence. "All your troubles can be easily solved, you just have to find a new, unique recipe." She explained the complexity of the task, as even the Tan family, with their dozens of research centers, could not boast at more than a dozen new recipes in 2 decades. Chu King only mysteriously dropped that he had a couple of his own recipes in stock, but they would discuss this later. He arranged a meeting with her family after the next auction to discuss all the details, and she only nodded slightly. But suddenly something caught his attention, and Chu King's gaze filled with rage, his face distorted with tension. The girl managed to grab his hand when Chu King quickly pulled her aside, casting an anxious glance around. Thoughts about the mystery of the mark that had been erased so suddenly during his flight raced through his head. Something was wrong. With an apology, Chu King hurriedly rushed away, asking him to tell Lin Dong to ask the teacher for permission, and the girl called out after him in confusion. As he ran, he called Juhuhude, sharing his concerns. Jingixi seemed to be in trouble, and Zihaju Qing asked him to track her phone. On the other end of the line, Juhuhuda, feverishly typing on the keyboard, promised to immediately send him the necessary data. Meanwhile, Chu Kering had already called another person, Ziyu, introducing himself as if foreshadowing an important conversation. Ziyu, surrounded by people, responded, immediately asking whether Chu King had found anything worthwhile. But Chu King only smiled, saying that it was a request for a favor, he needed a car. Without further ado, Ziyu immediately offered to pick him up, confirming his location. With a soft tap that ended the call, Chu King disconnected. Soon, Ziyu addressed the assembled crowd and announced with a smile the early closure of the auction house. The white sports car takes off, rapidly cutting through the cityscape. Inside the car, the passenger stared intently at the screen of his smartphone without wasting a second. Ye Jinxi's position changed again, as if trying to escape pursuit. "Let's go here," he exclaimed, pointing to a flickering dot on the screen. The driver nodded with a mysterious smile, fastening his seatbelt, and ordered, "Get ready." The car, as if transformed by a flash of energy, rushed forward, leaving behind only a trail of speed and pedals. At the limit of its capabilities, the sports car masterfully maneuvered, avoiding obstacles in its path. Chu King, as if sensing something was wrong, felt the tension growing, his golden eyes flashing with alarm. His gaze pierced the darkness, radiating power and determination, and electrical discharges thickened around his pupils. At that moment, a desperate vision appeared in his mind, the silhouette of a defenseless girl lying in a van. The white sports car swerved sharply, intending to block the path of the van as it sped away. The driver, keeping his cool, only smiled sarcastically, anticipating the outcome. A crushing blow shook the air, and the van, losing control, crashed into a nearby tree. Chu King jumped out of the car, his gaze fixed on the mangled van from which smoke was pouring. Two menacing figures armed with pistols emerged from the clouds of smoke, but Chu Kwang was already transforming, emitting a glow. He stepped forward as if walking on clouds, a flaming sword materializing in his hand, shimmering with divine light. "Quickly, shoot him!" the bandits shouted desperately, raising their weapons to the ready. The pistols spat out fire, but Chu King responded with a burst of golden energy that enveloped the attackers. Flashing his sword, he unleashed all his might upon them, his every gesture charged with lightning and ancient power. The next moment, the two bodies collapsed limply to the ground, while Chu Qing, surrounded by an aura of victory, towered above them. Chuchen seemed to have emerged from the battle unscathed, his steps confidently carrying him further down the road. An ordinary day, an ordinary bus. It was as if he was trying to get back to routine, to forget about what had happened. But suddenly, a sharp premonition pierced him, causing the world around him to freeze. The heavens opened up, revealing a shining portal from which thunderous power emanated. And now the bus he almost got on is engulfed in flames, and Chuchen is rapidly retreating. Through the smoke and sparks, a pair of feet, clad in shoes from another world, stepped onto the ground. From the clouds of fire emerged two figures, a majestic and imperturbable one, and his companion, full of arrogance. Chuchen gritted his teeth and prepared to face the challenge again, knowing that his peaceful life was now just a distant memory. The eldest of them, with a smile on his lips, invited Chuchen to join their powerful sect, recognizing his potential. But Chuchen merely smirked, challenging their arrogance and openly calling them trash, unworthy of his attention. The youngest of them, seething with anger, swore to kill the insolent man for insulting their great teacher. But Chuchen only advised them with a disdainful sneer to train for a couple more years before challenging him. The rage finally burst forth as the younger one charged into battle, his staff gleaming with the promise of vengeance. Without hesitation, he threw his pole staff at Chuchen, who easily parried the strike with his flaming sword. The collision of the two forces created an explosion of light and a roar that echoed across the devastated field. The sect warrior maneuvered skillfully, trying to find a hole in Chuchen's defense, unleashing a hail of blows. But suddenly, his staff shook and cracks appeared on it. Chuchen was not only defending himself, but also inflicting damage. In response to the furious cry about the damaged weapon, Chuchen, floating in the air, asked a devious question. Instantly, he brought the full force of his sword down on the polearm, aiming for its very core. With a deafening crack, the staff gave way and split into pieces, leaving the warrior unarmed. Suddenly, the warrior screamed in fury, his eyes blazing with furious anger. A crushing blow, engulfed in flames, was directed at Chu King, like a last desperate gesture. But Chu King was elusive. His shadow flashed, and a powerful blow fell into the void, and the warrior collapsed to the ground. There was a terrifying crunch of bones, and blood gushed onto the cobblestones, staining them crimson. A cry of agony broke the silence, heralding the inevitable end for the vanquished. But then another voice rang out, full of righteous anger. "How dare you hurt my brother?" His body was enveloped in a shining aura, and powerful Taiji energy rushed towards the enemy, accompanied by sharp, dark blades. A deafening explosion followed, shaking the very earth and filling the air with lightning. Chu Qing held the wounded warrior by the throat, and he, gasping for breath, whispered a plea for salvation. A cold, sinister smile flashed across Chu Qianyang's face, revealing his true nature. "The path of cultivation requires virtue," he said with a cunning squint, shadows dancing in his golden eyes. "You won't survive, kid!" the second warrior roared, gathering his last strength for a desperate attack. His figure, surrounded by lightning, soared into the sky like a ghost of a storm. A deadly beam of energy rained down from above, cutting through the heavens like divine retribution. However, the blow intended for Chu Qiang missed, leaving the second warrior in bewilderment and horror. And so he fell, bleeding, his last words a dying curse promising vengeance from his teacher. Suddenly, everything became quiet. Chuqing stood in the middle of a ruined landscape, shrouded in smoke. His gaze fell on the van, where the girl with scarlet hair lay motionless. A barely perceptible sigh, a slight movement, signs of returning consciousness. And the next moment her eyes opened, meeting his gaze, full of alarm and surprise. In a panic, she demands an explanation, not understanding how he ended up here, and warns him of the unimaginable power of the enemies. In response, Chuqing hugs her tightly, whispering words of comfort, promising that everything is behind her and she has nothing to worry about. But, looking over his shoulder, she sees only destruction and the motionless bodies of fallen enemies. Under a clear sky, among the wreckage of a wrecked vehicle, they stand, hugging each other, as if time has stood still, allowing them to comprehend what has happened. With a serious expression, Chuqing asks if she knows who could be behind this attack. She suspects that the Li family is to blame, as their recent clashes with hers have always resulted in the appearance of masters who forced them to retreat. Understanding the whole chain of events, Chuqing guesses that the Li family's advancement is connected to cooperation with the Taoists from the mountains. Images of two mysterious figures, whose ancient technique and incredible power amazed her and left a mark on her soul, surface in her memory. Now, holding hands, she admits that she has changed her mind about men, and he, in turn, notes how difficult the situation has become for her family. Enraged, she is indignant that, in addition to the Li family, they are now being harassed by other, smaller clans. A sudden revelation, Chuqing suspects that the auction in Xinjiang is to blame, likely triggering the family's activism. She puts a finger to her lips, thoughtfully, realizing that the misinformation had played into their hands, depriving them of the opportunity to prepare. In a burst of gratitude, she hugs him tightly, kisses him on the cheek, and sincerely admires his wisdom. She asks Chuqing to go home with her to tell her parents the whole truth together, and hints at a generous reward. Chuqing gently stroked her head, smiling at her naive determination. With a confident smile on his face, Chuqing agrees, accepting this new, risky but inevitable adventure. Night has enveloped the city. The first snowflakes are slowly swirling in the air, illuminated by the warm lights of a rich house. Inside, three influential ladies were gathered around the table. One was stern and imperious, another was reserved, and the third was elegant and insightful. Chuqing and the girl enter the room, calmly waiting for permission to disturb the peace of this meeting. A calm lady greets Chuqing, inviting him to sit down, but an imperious voice immediately interrupts them. The brother's disgruntled voice cut through the silence, addressing the woman with golden curls who refused to open her eyes. She sharply reprimands someone, her angry gaze and determined tone leaving no doubt about her dislike of outsiders. The finger points accusingly at Chuqing, emphasizing his unacceptability not only as an outsider, but also as the only man in this female circle. Chuqing only remained silent, his gaze hidden in the shadows as he pondered the unexpected reaction. But a slight smile appears on his face, and Chuqing calls for calm, assuring him that he has other intentions. He stands before them, confident and calm, while the other women seem to merely watch the tension unfold. The dark-haired lady was inwardly lamenting, realizing that Chuqing's appearance had ruined her cunning plan regarding Chen Shi's engagement. But Chuqing is unperturbed, and with a mysterious smile he holds out a glowing yellow crystal, announcing his arrival to discuss cooperation. "Look," he says, and the golden-haired woman reaches out, drawn to the stone's mysterious glimmer. In her hands, the stone glows with an unusual light, causing confusion. "What is this?" she whispers, realizing that this is not a simple mineral body. Chuqing explains, calling them spiritual stones, and offers women a special breathing technique to feel a surge of unknown power. The dark-haired lady follows the instructions, and in her hands the stone glows even brighter, filling her with energy. Her body is engulfed in a glow as she becomes completely immersed in meditation, and the other women merely watch as an unknown power awakens within her. Suddenly, a flash of pure energy pierces her, and the woman cries out, unable to contain the overwhelming sensations. The other ladies retreat in horror, their faces distorted with shock at such a powerful display. After coming to her senses, the dark-haired lady enthusiastically approaches Chuqing, wanting to purchase all of his spiritual stones at a reasonable price. But Chuqing gently refuses, explaining that spiritual stones cannot be sold directly. Her face darkens with anger again. "Boy, are you trying to make fun of us?" she asks, her voice threatening. But Chuqing, smiling confidently, finishes his thought, promising that the stones will appear at auction and he will be able to give her a discount. Today, as he explains, his goal is to offer them protective amulets and elixirs that can temporarily strengthen anyone who uses them. Chu words about temporary strengthening raise a storm of questions, as the prospect of receiving such powerful support seems unlikely. And Chu Qing, remaining calm, named a figure that could shake them to the core, 30%. A smile plays on the lips of one of the interlocutors as, stunned by the scale, she clarifies the details, production times, and, of course, the cost. Chu Qing explains the timeframes in detail. The amulets will be ready in a couple of days, the elixirs in a week, leaving the price up to them, but his generosity is genuinely perplexing. The reason for such help is simple and clear. Ye Jiangxi is his loyal friend, and friendship, as we know, knows no boundaries or conditions. The girl, touched by his words, lights up with a tender smile, her gaze expressing deep gratitude and nascent warmth. Night envelops the world in its mysterious veil, carrying the heroes into new experiences and intimate conversations under the light of the new moon. Amidst the rustling leaves illuminated by the moonlight, Chu Qing and Ye Jiangxi stand opposite each other, their silhouettes disappearing into the night haze. Ye Jiangxi admits that she started their acquaintance with selfish motives, but now, thanks to his kindness, they have become true friends, and he has helped not only her, but her entire family. Chu Qing, in turn, with a slight smile, admits that he is beginning to really like this new life, full of challenges and unexpected acquaintances. After a busy day, Chu Qing finally returns home, his voice echoing in the silence of the night, announcing his arrival. But instead of the usual silence, he is met with something completely unexpected, and a grimace of surprise freezes on his face. In the living room, as if waiting for him, sit three strangers, and one of them, an elderly lady, looks at him with undisguised interest. The elderly lady, introducing herself as second aunt Chu Qing, holds a cigarette in her hand, and her gaze is piercing and commanding. Chu Qing greets her with a polite smile, but his heart is in turmoil. It's the first time he's heard of such a relative, and her appearance seems extremely suspicious. And the aunt, without wasting any time, bluntly declares the purpose of her visit. She has come to marry him off, and this announcement is like a bolt from the blue. Chu Qing's world seemed to collapse in an instant. His gaze darkened, and his mind refused to accept such shocking news. Trying to pull himself together, Chu Qing objects that he is still too young, hasn't even finished school, and asks to postpone the conversation about marriage until he graduates from university. But the aunt only smirks, blowing out a stream of smoke. University for a man is a waste of time and money, because his true purpose is completely different. Anger overwhelms Chu Qing. His gaze becomes furious, because in this world where women rule, he feels like just a pawn in someone else's game. While the women exchange barbed remarks about their eldest daughter, the auntie asks with disdain whether Chu Xiao is still sleeping in graduate school. Chu Qing only guesses that his sister is most likely still asleep, carefree in her dreams. Auntie, angrily puffing on her cigarette, reproaches Chu Qing's mother, considering such behavior a disgrace and the result of improper upbringing. The father, wearing an apron, tries to ease the growing tension by offering to make tea, while his wife just endures it in silence. But the father's face only reflects weariness from this eternal drama, and Chu Qing only turns away, feeling growing anger. Chu Qing clenched his fists, a dangerous thought flashing through his mind about how easy it would be to shut up that annoying voice. Undeterred, the aunt continues her tirade, reproaching Chu Qing's mother for her choice, and praising the imaginary well-being of her marriage to the heir of Hai-Shi. The air in the room thickened with unspoken grievances. It seemed about to explode. A sudden, deafening crack breaks the silence, causing everyone to jump in surprise. It was Chu Qing, his fist slamming down on the table, a thin stream of smoke from the destruction still swirling above him. Under his aunt's menacing gaze, he calmly apologizes, citing the uninvited fly, but her anger only flares up with renewed vigor. Chu Qing's mother watches her departing aunt with an anxious look, anticipating new problems. Auntie turns to Chu Qing, throwing him haughty words as she leaves about the fleeting nature of his youth and the inevitability of his imminent marriage. But Chu Qing only smirked, challenging her boldly. Why should he obey her? Auntie's face contorts with rage as she declares, his obedience is the key to the family's well-being, and only a rich bride can save him. Chu Qing crossed his arms and coldly said that he was capable of taking care of himself, not wanting to put up with her plans. With a caustic smile, he asks a caustic question. If money is so important, then how much is someone's leg worth? This attack makes the aunt explode with righteous anger, and the mother freezes in horror at his insolence. Chu Qing's golden eyes flash with determination, reflecting an internal rebellion against the fate imposed on him. He leaves, leaving behind only growing tension, and the puzzled looks of the adults remain behind him. With a heavy heart, Chu Qing takes a step into the unknown, leaving behind the burden of others' expectations. His golden eyes flash with determination, And deep inside, he grows a silent challenge to the world that tries to bind him. In the night silence of the metropolis, Chuqing hears someone's voice addressing him with a mysterious request. The city lights are reflected in the glass of high-rise buildings, hiding many secrets and upcoming events under their cover. Meanwhile, in another corner of the city, an atmosphere of debauchery and idleness reigns, where the powerful figure of a woman encourages recklessness. An unseen observer lurks in the shadows, his gaze sliding over the reflection in the window, studying the scene. But there comes a time when the masks come off, and those who are really pulling the strings emerge from the shadows, exuding a cold aura of power. A commanding voice was heard on the phone, thinking over each move as if in a game of chess. Her golden eyes, so similar to Chuqing's, light up with a cunning fire, foreshadowing new intrigues. Away from all this chaos, Chuqing plunges into meditation, surrounded by shimmering particles of light and mysterious artifacts. Tensions rise in the city, and his family faces new threats, but Chuqing luckily manages to create protective wards. Concentrating his power, he forms a tiny, glowing sphere of pure energy. With one flick of his finger, he transforms an ordinary object into a mystical artifact, ready to serve as a defense. His hands move in the air, and a powerful stream of magic penetrates and sanctifies each of the created amulets. The golden glow dissolves, leaving behind only strengthened and power-filled artifacts, ready for action. Jade pendants forged from sacred material can now summon protective swords and warn of danger. And at home, at the dinner table, an atmosphere of warmth and comfort reigns, where Chuqing finds a brief refuge from his secrets. The elders carefully remind him of the importance of studying, as if unaware of the young man's double life. He listens to their words, and a shadow of deep thoughtfulness flickers in his eyes, as if he is weighing his obligations. But then he gives them a sincere smile, promising diligence, hiding behind it the whole weight of his fate. Their words fly to him, full of tenderness, affirming that the main thing is his happiness. And then Chuqing, touched by this warmth, announces that he has a surprise for everyone. He takes out several elegant talismans, each one intended for members of his family. The parents, amazed, look at the gifts, their eyes reflecting genuine joy. "Son, where did you find these?" the father asks, feeling the pleasant coolness of the stone. "They seem so special." The father, beaming with pride and tenderness, presses his gift to his heart. Chuqing only smiles mysteriously, answering that he found them in the same temple without revealing the whole secret. The days fly by, and Chuqing is once again immersed in the everyday life of school. Peaceful and, at first glance, boring. But even here, among his classmates, his thoughts are somewhere far away, beyond the stuffy classroom. His girlfriend, noticing him sleeping, desperately tries to wake him up, fearing the teacher's imminent appearance. Feeling the danger approaching, she becomes increasingly nervous, her gaze fixed on the menacing figure. And then, a sharp blow on the desk tears Chuqing from the embrace of sleep, causing him to shudder in fear. The teacher, with a sly smile, invites him to the board, offering to solve a difficult problem. Standing in front of the board with chalk in his hand, Chuqing feels confused because he slept through the entire lesson. But suddenly, like lightning, he is struck by the memory of Song Chaoran explaining these formulas to him. Having remembered all the details, he gets down to business with dashing confidence, the chalk quickly sliding across the board. A moment later, the problem is solved, and Chuqing calmly puts the chalk back in place. "Master, I'm finished," he says with unwavering confidence, leaving her stunned. A shocked whisper echoes through the class. "How could he? He slept through the whole lesson," the teacher asks, perplexed. Hiding her surprise behind a slight smile, she still reminds him of discipline, but hidden admiration can be seen in her eyes. Chuqing himself seems to be unable to understand how such a miracle could have been possible, as his academic performance had been poor up until now. But before he has time to sort out his thoughts, the teacher, with a sly glint in her eyes, decides to take advantage of the moment and offers him the honorable but perhaps burdensome position of class monitor. Her gaze, full of domineering benevolence, leaves no room for refusal, and Chuqing seems to already feel the weight of unexpected responsibility falling on him.